Camera controls.
Hello and welcome back to Road Visualizer. We're going to take a break from visualizing all the different lane information, and instead we're going to very quickly introduce some camera controls. So if we go ahead and run our existing project, taking off from last video, what we'll notice is we have nothing visible in our game view. However, in our scene, we can manipulate our scene camera and take a look at our data. But I would like to make it possible for us to move around inside of the game and not just the scene view, because eventually the intent behind this application was to give it to someone else to explore the data set. We're going to create a very simple camera control for this setup. All it's going to require is a speed and a scroll rate value, and we're going to use the WASD keys to move above the road surface and the middle mouse scroll wheel to zoom in and out. Let's go ahead and create our script. Create C# script. Call this camera controls. So double click to open in Visual Studio or MonoDevelop. There we are. And here's our camera control. So this is going to be attached directly to our camera and control where it moves. So let's go ahead to our main camera and attach camera controls to it. The first thing we should probably do is get a reference to the camera component. So let's go ahead and do a protected camera cam. In start, let's go ahead and get cam is equal to get component camera. Now we're only going to do a few things in update, but we will need to have a few public variables so we can modify our speed. So we'll do speed, public float speed is equal to 50.0f, and public float scroll rate, which is how quickly we're going to zoom in and out, is equal to 50.0f. By the way, something we could add, because we're requiring a camera reference, we could of course go to require component, parenthesis, type of, and then camera. Just a fail-safe in case we ever use this script somewhere else. Anyway, back in update, let's do a float H, which is going to be our horizontal movement, input.getAxis, and what we want to do is get our horizontal axis. Now if you're not familiar with this, you need to go into your edit and project settings input pane, and under axes there's several already set up for you: horizontal, vertical, and so forth and so on. In our particular case, we're going to use the ASD key, and those are already set up by default in Unity. We can see here the horizontal already has keys to the negative button being A and the positive button being D. The vertical has our S and W keys right there as well. We can grab this information of the axis by using its name. Back in here, so we've grabbed the horizontal input axis. So now that we've set that up, let's come back in here and multiply that value that we get by our speed, and of course by our time.delta time. So what this is going to do is take our input axis, which should be a value between 0 and 1, multiply it by our speed, but because our speed has units of distance over time, we need to get rid of that time element, and we multiply it by time.delta time to determine how much we should actually be moving in that time frame. Let's now do this for the vertical portion. Float v is equal to input.getAxis, and in this case it's going to be the vertical. Wow, the fingers are not working today. Speed, once again, you could provide different speeds for the vertical and the horizontal, but in my particular case we're just going to have one overall speed value. Time.delta time, delegate, that's not what I want. Autocomplete did not do a good job there. Okay, and now we just want to determine our mouse wheel. So let's do float MW for mouse wheel is going to be equal to input.getAxis. We'll do mouse scroll wheel. Now if you need to know how I got this value, once again just go back over into input on Unity, edit, project settings, input, and then scroll down, and then you'll see there's a name of mouse scroll wheel set up right here for everything that you need. Back in our project, we need to multiply this by our scroll rate. times scroll rate times time.delta time. And then in my particular case, I multiply it by a negative 1.0 because for me the data coming in is in the wrong direction. That is how I like to scroll the mouse wheel didn't make sense. So now we want to modify our position. So let's do a game object dot transform dot translate. And now we're going to translate ourselves the offsets we've calculated in the horizontal vertical directions, but we're not going to move in our z direction. Now we need to modify our orthographic size, which I found the easiest way for us to zoom in and out. So I'm manipulating the orthographic size. We go to main camera. For some reason we still have a perspective camera, so let's fix that, change it to orthographic, and here's our orthographic size right there. So let's go into the scene. Oh, I have the game running, so that's going to lose all my settings. So let's make sure we're not running the game. Go to orthographic, find where our camera is. There it is right there. And let's rotate our camera to look downwards. Set it to 90 degrees in the rotation on the X. I'm going to save it really quick. Now I do need to know where the road surface is generated because it's not quite exactly at 0. But before I can get to that point, I need to check an error in my script. So I probably just left something someplace. So let's see really quick where my error is. Error, parsing error on line 31. Line 31, right there. So most likely I've got some sort of here's my error. My required component missed the end bracket, which is also why my IntelliSense wasn't working properly. Come back down in here, hit run, and go back to my scene view. And let's take a look at where the road surface actually is. So we can see we have quite the offset from where our camera is. The road surface is way up over there, where our camera is way there. So let's take a look first at where our data is being plotted, and I'm just going to move my camera accordingly. So let's take a look at the data really quick and just get an understanding of where our object is going to start. So here's our X, Y, and Z start position. So you can see we have a little bit of a negative location, but for the most part it's around 650 and 570 or so. So let's go ahead and use that data to set up our camera properly. I'm going to turn off the game running mode. Let's go ahead to my camera, and I want to use a value of 650 in the X, and in the value of Z we want to use a 530. So if I'm right now, I've displaced my object 650 and 530 to get it back to the center of where the data exists. Our road generator is at the 0 location, so I shouldn't have any transforms affecting the data being generated. If we take a look now in our game view, we can actually see the road surface right over there. So that's good. So at least it's within the camera's viewpoint. So let's go ahead and see if things work. So there's my A and D key being pressed, and now my W and S key moving in so I can check out my road. Of course, if I use my middle mouse now, I'm dragging outwards. I'm adjusting the size of my orthographic view. Working pretty well. And now it's very easy for me to just scroll along our lanes and see what's going on. So in the next video, we're going to take a look at adding in the lane boundaries so we can actually look at this data set and understand where the user's driving relative to the road. And then the final video we'll look at is adding a Unity GUI so anyone can add their own script files to this entire thing. Actually, you know what the problem is? I didn't hit the end. It looks like if we come over here to my scene view, we actually slowly, ever so slowly, go up, 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 up in the air. So what I might need to do is introduce a Z offset to my camera, or I could just move the camera up higher so that I never run into this problem, because there is a maximum elevation to this data set. So a couple different ways you could solve it. But in my case, I'm going to be lazy and I'm just going to move my camera up a little bit so I never actually clip off my road with my near plane. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. It was nice and easy and fast to add camera controls, very basic ones, mind you. But remember, if you enjoy this video series or any of my videos, remember to like and subscribe. Camera controls.